Once the ground where oppression took root and generations stood firm through seasons of neglect, this parish has been the stage of profound struggles, from uprisings that changed the course of history to decades of economic stagnation and missed opportunity. But time has a way of turning tides. This is Rethinking St. Thomas. For many residents, St. Thomas often felt like a long-lost cousin, close to the capital, but distant from the pace of national development. While other parishes surged ahead with infrastructure and investment, St. Thomas waited and waited and waited. Over time, a quiet sentiment took root, one of being left behind, forgotten.
So St. Thomas for me was never a forgotten parish. The fact that it was always mentioned, even in conversations where people were calling it forgotten, in itself negates the idea that it was ever a forgotten parish. But connected back to the days of history and the Morant Bay War, and the work of Paul Bogle and the several people who actually, the warriors we call them, who actually were involved in what many call rebellion. In certain circles they call it war. That's a whole other story for a whole other day. I feel like because we were such a revolutionary people, we were willing to fight for our rights. I think we took a blow for it, right? So, and we were fighting for rights for people across Jamaica. St. Thomas, yes, but people across Jamaica. So you will hear the story of the Queen broke her pen on St. Thomas. I don't know if you've ever heard that. So they're saying it was almost like there was a curse over us, and that curse followed us to the extent that we were the last one to get a high school, and to the more trivial markers that people will use for fun of development in terms of stoplight and KFC. We all know that has changed now, but there are many things that we didn't get until way later than other parishes.
Positioned just outside the urban spotlight, St. Thomas faced its share of development challenges, from inadequate roads to gaps in water access. Progress here often felt out of reach.
When you're from country, you go to town for everything. To get your passport done, for your visa, to go on trips, pantomime. So we've done that road back and forth, and we had a terrible road network. And because there are so many corners, and you know, it's just the bumpiness and the corners, by the time you get home, you're half asleep, you're super tired. And even in smaller communities, it varies in terms of good roads and bad roads. And it's country, so you have the typical narrow country roads.
We have to look at St. Thomas as the most eastern parish in Jamaica. Traditionally and historically, most of our weather-related events, storms, hurricanes, tropical waves, and the like, they tend to hit Jamaica from the east. And very often, St. Thomas would be significantly impacted. Generally, the roads were particularly bad. We at the National Works Agency, we are responsible for the main road network. That's for starters. And so we have had a lot of challenges with our main road network, chief of which would have been the road from Fair Prospect into Morant Bay to Harbour View. This is the main part of the main arterial network that spans the island of Jamaica. And this corridor was not in a very healthy condition for many years, notwithstanding the fact that we would have spent significant sums to carry out things like sea defense works. We did a number of phases of work at Roselle in St. Thomas as we sought to build resilience into the road going through that space. But that, even though we had done so, we still needed more. We also had situations where base failure was a big deal in the Pamfret area. That road between White Horses and Yallas was well known for its undulating nature. So we needed major investments in this space in order to make access into Kingston from St. Thomas and vice versa that much easier.
For decades, St. Thomas would have been impacted by challenges in terms of drought impact, challenges with supply and demand, challenges with an aged infrastructure, which would have meant that some persons, areas like Spring Garden, Stanton, would not have had water for, at different instances, over a 20-year period. Areas such as Wilmington, Danvers, Penn, because of the elevation issues, some instances of illegal extraction of water, those two would have, and also drought. A lot of the systems in St. Thomas do find themselves susceptible to the impact of dry spells and drought. So for prolonged periods, customers would have been impacted.
Yeah, so there were communities that had limited access to water. I'm from Seafort, St. Thomas, Blacksmith Lane to be exact. And there are times when, we have to catch up water in a bucket and barrels and so on because it wasn't consistent. So there wasn't like no water at all, but there would be periods where it was intermittent, So yeah, I think it's improving. There are communities that I knew that had no water at all, that has at least intermittent water and water trucks going to the community. The hope is that everybody will have full and free access to running water, and it's improving, but it's been a little bit of a challenge over the years.
It's a no-brainer, and it's one that we're concerned about, in that just the daily livelihood of homes being able to prepare for work and school, small and large businesses being able to carry out normal activities. So it would have put a dent, or at least maybe slowed the pace of productivity, the ease of persons accessing water readily in no uncertain terms would have also impacted the level of production and the ease at which persons can sanitize, consume water and go about their daily businesses.
But as the expression goes, delay is not denial. And for St. Thomas, though long deferred, the wait has not been wasted. What once felt distant is now within reach, as things take a sharp and visible turn.
Well, as you know, the government, through the Southern Coastal Highway Improvement Project, has invested significantly into the infrastructure of St. Thomas and Portland. Specifically, as it relates to St. Thomas, not only are we fixing the road between St. Andrew, or the main road between Harborview, Morant Bay to Fair Prospect, but crucially, the corridor, which spans roughly 14 kilometers from Morant Bay to Cedar Valley, this road has also benefited from major investments through the Southern Coastal Highway Improvement Project, and in particular the work to rehabilitate that section of road from Morant Bay to Cedar Valley. We have done significant work to include gabion retaining structures, to include a widening of the road, to improve new drainage features, the whole gamut of works we'd have done. Also, we'd have put in fiber optic ducts to facilitate future infrastructural works where the fiber network is concerned.
you see, once you know that you're able to predict water supply, or to the point where it gets where it's not something you have to consider, then it's a big difference. It means you can plan your affairs around being able to take a shower, being able to open your business place, being able to open schools, health centers. And that level of reliability is what we're seeing now coming to bear, and we're seeing the improvements in the homes, customer responses, in terms of bill payments, customer satisfaction. We're repairing less leaks because the infrastructure is now a newer one, and both from the pumps and from the state of the pipes themselves. And we are beginning to see just the general response from customers in that regard.
So over the past few years, I think there has been a drive for a renewal. I'm a part of an organization called St. Thomas Renaissance Foundation, and just the call for a renaissance, for a change from who we call Saint-Thomians, in other words, people from St. Thomas, all over the world have been gathering. I remember when I was a Achieving Scholar in England, I would have seen several communities of people from St. Thomas just coming together for 9 nights and all sorts of events. So almost like how schools have alumni bodies, is like the people from St. Thomas all over the world. There's been a movement or an activation amongst us, and even locally, some people who have moved out from St. Thomas into Kingston, they still stay connected, right? So the sense of what can I do for my parish? Am I going to advocate? Am I going to reinvest? That sense has been increasing and improving, and I think that it has filtered up to our leaders, and they have felt the pulse from the people.
New roads built the path. Clean, reliable water fueled the momentum. And on May 15, 2025, it all came together for the world to see. The Morant Bay Urban Centre, the bold expression of a parish revitalized. Spanning over 436,000 square feet on 25 acres of land, the $6 billion Jamaican dollar facility includes government offices, BPOs, business spaces, and even the parish's first KFC. This is a project that has journeyed from bold vision to tangible reality.
6 years in the making. From June 2019, groundbreaking. Most Honorable Prime Minister, you had this vision of creating a town centre for Morant Bay, which would be an example of sustainable development and growth for the people of St. Thomas. A town centre that provides a framework to encourage and support public order in Jamaica, which we all know is needed. A town centre to facilitate the fusion between public and private sector entities in a one-stop stop, which will provide efficiency in doing business.
Today, we definitively close the chapter of decades of underdevelopment, disinvestment, infrastructural neglect that have long defined a narrative of St. Thomas being the forgotten parish. Today, we emphatically declare that St. Thomas is firmly on the path for the fulfillment of its true vision of a prosperous, growing, fair, and equitable society.
As the rain poured, the past washed away, making room for a new chapter.
We are laying the foundation, my friends, for a new economy in this parish. And I want you to pay attention to that mission. We are not going to create prosperity without creating an economy. And to create the economy, you have to build infrastructure, because it is the infrastructure that creates the platform on which people can do business and generate profit and satisfy demand. This lovely facility here, this very convenient facility here, well designed and well laid out, this is going to create the new economy that will generate the new wealth for the parish. Not just for people who are already rich, but for every single person in St. Thomas. This will be generating the prosperity that you have always wished for.
Long time I wait for stuff like this, man. Long time. I just read, so I feel good. All the kids see, but we up here on got Kingston.
You know what I'm excited about? The bank, the college, best in the parish. Talk about the best in the Caribbean.
The truth is, this has been something that's long awaited, long coming. We have waited for something of this grand scale to be implemented in the parish, so young people and older friends alike can benefit from jobs and other opportunities. And the truth is that now that it's finally here, it only goes to show how much your government is doing to ensure that that no one is left behind, that everyone gets a chance to get forward in life. So I am really grateful that my people, my young people especially, can benefit, cannot slip through the cracks like they often have been doing, especially in St. Thomas. So hats off to the government for doing this, and it's really good. I'm looking forward to the future for what awaits on this grand compound. Yeah.
It's a momentous day, historical day for the people of St. Thomas, the forgotten parish, the people that don't get to experience first world amenities. When you can just go down the road and look a 5-minute or 15-minute taxi drive and get your passport, it means a lot. When you heard the roar of the people when the different municipality and the government agencies that are going to be here, you understand the struggles of our people. Because in a normal world, somebody from Kingston wouldn't even celebrate that. It means nothing to them. But to us here, having the ability to get an ultrasound, the ability to get a sonogram without driving an hour and a half to Kingston and waiting on long lines, it means that the investment that was made into the infrastructure is bearing fruit. And you can see it in the Morant Bay Urban Centre, and the future is bright. There's many opportunities to come for St. Thomasians, and we look forward to a great surge of socio-economic impact.
From forgotten to future ready, from overlooked to unfolding greatness, St. Thomas is no longer waiting. It is becoming. This is more than development. It's a declaration, a bold rethinking of what this parish is destined to be.